The chandeliers shimmered like frozen fire above the grand ballroom, where polished marble floors reflected the clinking of wine glasses and low, cultured laughter. It was a night reserved for high society. The elite of Vienna's classical music circle gathered for an exclusive benefit gala. At the center of it all stood Maestro Victor Langston, 57, the man critics called the last living genius of the Romantic era. His tuxedo fit like it was stitched from confidence. He was surrounded by donors, journalists, and aging music critics who nodded reverently at every word he spoke. Tonight, Victor wasn't just the honored performer. He was the brand, the face, the legacy. In the far corner of the room, a young woman quietly wiped fingerprints from the side of a concert grand piano. No one knew her name. They simply called her the Maid. Her name was Elena Alvarez. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun, her uniform perfectly pressed. She moved with purpose. Quiet, careful, invisible. Just the way this place liked its staff to be. She had cleaned this piano every day for 4 years. She had dreamed in front of it for longer. Victor turned mid-sentence and caught sight of her. Elena's hand gently hovered above the keys, just for a second. Almost instinctively. He raised an eyebrow. Then he laughed. Not loud. Not cruel. Just enough to be heard by the circle of people around him. "Careful, dear," he said smoothly. "That's not a toy from the servants' quarters." Elena instantly withdrew her hand, her face flushing. "I'm sorry, sir." Victor grinned at the soft laughter around him. She turned away quickly. She knew better than to challenge the maestro. But as she disappeared behind a curtain with her cleaning supplies, no one noticed the quiet detail. She had touched middle C. And the key rang out perfectly, clean, steady, and full of promise. Victor looked back at his admirers, satisfied. What he didn't realize was that single note had awakened something the room wasn't ready for. Later that evening, the ballroom dimmed. Velvet curtains parted to reveal the grand piano, spotlighted like a monument. The room hushed with anticipation as Maestro Victor Langston took the stage. He didn't just play the piano. He commanded it. His fingers moved like they'd been carved for the keys, deliberate, sharp, mercilessly perfect. The audience sat spellbound, moved not by emotion but by precision. Elena stood behind the last row, half hidden by a heavy pillar. Her shift had technically ended, but she stayed. She always did when Victor played. Not because she admired him, not anymore, but because the music still meant something to her. Even now. She closed her eyes as the final note of Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 rang out across the hall. Applause thundered. Victor rose, bowed, and basked in it like a sun god. Then he saw her. Just barely. Her dark eyes, her maid's uniform, her stillness in a sea of motion. The corner of his mouth curled. He stepped back to the piano bench and spoke into the microphone. "Before I play my final piece, I'd like to offer a brief moment of levity." A ripple of curiosity passed through the crowd. Victor gestured toward the back. "Young lady by the curtain," he said lightly, "I noticed your attention earlier." Elena froze. "Do you play?" His tone was casual, but every word was barbed. I used to," Elena said quietly, caught between shadows and stares. Victor smiled. "Wonderful. Then by all means, come show us a bit of your used to." Laughter flickered through the crowd like flame on dry paper. Elena looked around, for an exit, for help, for mercy. There was none. Only eyes. So many eyes. Victor stepped away from the bench, one arm extended, as if this were an act of generosity. "You see," he added, "music is universal. Surely even those who clean this sacred instrument can feel its magic." More laughter now. Crueler. Elena stepped forward slowly. Her shoes echoed against the marble floor like tiny acts of defiance. Her hands trembled, but her spine straightened with every step. The audience expected failure. They came for a concert, but this was a sideshow now. Victor watched with smug curiosity. He had no idea what was coming. Elena sat at the bench. The keys loomed before her like old friends she hadn't dared visit in years. She took a breath, so deep it felt like a prayer. The room watched in silence, expecting a stumble,
A mistake.
a few awkward plinks, and maybe some nervous tears. Instead, she began with Rachmaninoff. Not Twinkle Twinkle. Not Fur Elise. Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, a piece so technically brutal and emotionally vast, most pianists avoid it unless they're prepared to bleed through the keys. The first chord struck like a thunderclap. The room jolted. Victor blinked. She didn't play cautiously. She played like the piano owed her something. Like the music had lived inside her and had waited too long to be heard. Every hand in the audience stilled. Every whisper died. Because Elena wasn't just playing,
She was speaking.
the thundering march of the prelude shook the chandeliers. Her fingers moved with a wild grace, unpolished, but passionate.
Raw.
Human.
Real.
Victor stepped forward slowly, like a man approaching a ghost. He stared at her hands, stunned. These weren't the motions of someone who had dabbled. These were the hands of someone born for this. As Elena reached the haunting middle section, soft, aching, like memory wrapped in fog, something even stranger happened. People cried. Mrs. Calloway, who hadn't cried since her husband's funeral, wiped her eyes with a lace glove. A teenage cellist in the corner stood still as stone, whispering, "How?" And Victor could only stare. Because for the first time in decades, he wasn't the best pianist in the room. Elena hit the final crashing chord, and for a long, breathless second, the ballroom was silent. No applause. No coughs. Just stunned, sacred stillness. Then, like the breaking of a dam, came the sound. One person stood. Then 2. Then 20. The hall erupted in thunderous applause, rising like a storm. But Elena just sat there, staring at her hands. Hands that had scrubbed floors, polished brass, and wiped down the very piano she just made sing like it remembered being alive. Victor stepped forward slowly, as if walking toward a reckoning. When he reached her, he didn't speak into the mic. He spoke directly to her. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Elena stood, her voice soft but steady. "My mother taught me. She was a housekeeper too. She said music didn't care about titles, only truth." Victor's throat tightened. For the first time that night, he wasn't performing. He was just listening. The audience quieted as he turned toward them. "I owe you all and this young woman an apology," he said. His voice shook. "I tried to make her small tonight, to remind her of her place.
He paused.
But she reminded me of mine." Then, in front of everyone, he offered her the bench. Not as a joke, not as a trap, but as a musician offering the stage to someone who had just reminded him why music mattered in the first place. "Would you play one more?" he asked. Elena hesitated. Then she looked at the crowd. And for the first time, she didn't see strangers. She saw people, human, humbled, moved. She nodded. Her fingers returned to the keys. This time, she chose something simple. A lullaby. A piece her mother used to hum while mopping the church floors late at night. And in that moment, under golden chandeliers and tear-stained applause, the maid became a master. Not because she wore a gown. Not because someone gave her permission. But because she reminded a room full of power. What it sounds like when a soul finally speaks.